Peggy 12.
Roguecraft DX is a new single-game cartridge release for Evercade. If you're new to Evercade, it's a physical cartridge retro gaming system that publishes retro home computer, home console, and arcade games. Each release comes with a physical cartridge in a box with a full-colour manual, all made by us. Roguecraft DX is only the second game to get a single cartridge release, following the 2023 release Full Void from Out of the Bit Studios, which was well received by critics and fans alike. Roguecraft DX is a new Amiga game from Badger Punch Games, but rather than me go through it with you, let's have the team at Badger Punch take you on a deep dive of this new roguelike game.
Roguecraft is a casual, turn-based, Lovecraftian roguelike that Ricki and I made as a passion project. It's kind of a spiritual successor to Rogue 64, which did great on the Commodore 64 and even showed up as a secret game on Evercade.
We wanted to keep the simple and easy to get into gameplay, but make the game deeper, prettier, and more feature-rich to suit the Amiga better.
Badger Punch Games is just the two of us, Ricki and me, Henning.
We're two old school computer nerds who became friends back in the 1990s when we joined the same Amiga demo group. We've been making games together for over 20 years, but the last 15 of them as Badger Punch Games.
In the early 2000s, we actually moved to Greece together with a bunch of friends and started a game company. Eventually, Ricki moved back to Norway while I stayed in Greece for another year. And that's when we started making small games together over the internet.
We're very passionate about making games that look good and are simple to get into, but you keep playing because of the fun and the polished experience. I got a Commodore 64 in 1986 and immediately fell in love with the machine and playing games on it. After a while I got bored with the games that came with the machine and started reading the manual to find out what else it could do.
I'm a big nostalgia nerd, so when I get the opportunity to work on IPs I grew up with and care about, I often find myself geeking out and remind myself I'm loving making games no matter the format.
With Roguecraft, we wanted to see if we could distill the traditional roguelike elements down to a game that's easy to get into, but has enough depth to be discovered that it keeps you coming back for more.
The retro gaming community is incredible, and companies like Blaze Entertainment are doing amazing work to support and inspire both fans and devs like us.
There's so much awesome stuff being done in the retro communities today, and that is also a huge inspiration for us.
The Amiga was a big deal here in Norway and across the Nordics. I remember how magical it felt finally getting one after seeing them in the computer stores. And not to sound like a grumpy old man, but computers and consoles had so much personality and mystery back then.
Being part of the Amiga scene back in the 90s was a great experience. I still remember the fun times we had going to demo parties, staying up multiple nights creating demos and hanging out with other geeks.
And with the current rise of retro gaming, there's a real sense of community again. People are brought together by shared nostalgia, and what's really exciting is seeing younger folks who never grew up with this hardware, really getting into it and even creating games for it.
When Henning and I got into the retro gaming scene and started developing games for these old machines, then we felt the same sense of community again. Both the developers and the retro gamers hang out in the same community, celebrating these old machines and keeping them alive with new content and new experiences.
It all started with Rogue 4K, a tiny game Ricki made for a charity game jam, where the challenge was to stay under 4,000 bytes. So we expanded it to Rogue 64 with better art and more features. It did well on the Commodore 64, both digitally and as a big box release.
Going from 8-bit to 16-bit felt like the next step, and since we're both from the Amiga demo scene, making a proper Amiga version was a natural move.
I also wanted to create a game with better graphics, as I felt I didn't max out the potential at all with Rogue 64. So that became Roguecraft. Roguecraft has 3 player classes that also act as difficulty levels, offering 3 different ways to play the game. The monsters mix Lovecraftian mythos and high fantasy influences with some unique twists. The dungeons change as you go deeper, enemies get tougher, and new environments open up to explore. Sure, you could pack a roguelike with tons of complex systems and layered mechanics, but we decided to keep things focused. In my experience, the game starts off almost cozy, relaxing even, but as you go deeper and the difficulty ramps up, it shifts into something more strategic. The music by Amiga tracker legend Yugar Lilidal really sets the atmosphere as you make your way through the dungeons of Mordecum, which, by the way, is an anagram you might recognize.
We were lucky to have our Commodore 64 game Rogue 64 released as a secret game on the Evercade in 2023.
The community's feedback was amazing, so when Roguecraft was ready for the Amiga, we asked Blaze Entertainment if they wanted to work with us. We were thrilled but also nervous. We wanted to give the Evercade community the best game possible. Expanding the game for Evercade was a quick and natural choice.
Roguecraft is programmed in assembly, which is a language of the hardware. In assembly, you're talking directly with the machine by moving data in and out of memory and poking the chips to make stuff happen. Roguecraft is a pretty big project for such a low-level language. Luckily, with modern tools, everything is a little easier than before. I use a scripting language called Python to create the scripts that do different things, like process the graphic files from Henning or convert the room data from the tiled level editor.
Elements like the start screen, the instruction screen, and the character selection screen were based on 3D renders. I modeled the scenes in 3D, brought them into Photoshop, and used it as a foundation where I adapted the colors to our palette. Then I spent many evenings manually pixelating and fine-tuning. Starting with a 3D foundation was really practical. Creating the isometric tile-based level art assets for the dungeons was very much a step-by-step process. We went through loads of iterations on the visuals of the dungeons, building on each previous set and improving over time. Even though the levels are procedurally generated, I still wanted to manually hand design each room, while keeping randomness in the number of doors. For the DX version, we have almost 200 handmade rooms built to maximize variety in the now 15 levels deep dungeon. I decided early on to stick with tools I was comfortable with, but using Photoshop with a strict 32 color palette is not as easy as it sounds. After some research, I came up with a method I call dynamic indexing. By using a few layer styles, I can work with a locked 32 color palette in Photoshop and still use most of its tools and features non-destructively. This setup has helped us a lot. That said, it was definitely a challenge to create a flexible 32 color palette that covers backgrounds, all the level assets, all monsters, the player characters, potions, effects, and the UI.
The Debug Indie Game Awards meant a lot to us. We didn't expect to win, especially with such great nominees.
We just went to Nottingham for fun, to meet Blaze Entertainment, meet old friends, check out the event, and grab a couple of beers together.
When we won, we were totally lost for words, as you can see in the video.
This recognition for our passion project means the world to us, especially winning a Retro Game Award with an Amiga game.
It has been a wonderful, inspiring and rewarding journey making Roguecraft DX. There have been some frustrating moments, as there always are in game development. There's always a point you get to where you're not sure if you're going to be able to complete what you started. But the only way to finish a project like this is to power on through the frustration to the end of the journey. And here we are now. We are very proud of what we've accomplished with Roguecraft DX. I would like to thank Blaze for this opportunity. We've had a great collaboration, and seeing the passion Blaze has for Evercade has been inspiring.
Roguecraft DX is compatible with all Evercade and Super Pocket consoles and is available right now from your local Evercade retailer.